All right, so now we will look at the source code for the doubly linked list. So the source code, I had uploaded it in our Google Drive. So you can go to our Google Drive. Again, it's accessible from our course webpage, right? So you can go to the course webpage, or I'm going to open it from my Google Drive here. If I would go to the slides, lesson 6, part 2. If you go to part 2, the folder is available right here. If you click on DLL, you should find the source code for the starter code version here. Um, and as I mentioned earlier, you should also feel free to go from our course web page as well. If you would go to my website and the teaching section, and then CS 101, if you scroll all the way down to lesson 6, if you would click on the slides here, then the link would take you to the part 2 as well. So if I would click on that, I see part 2 right here. So again, please download that part 2 copy, and so that you can get started with the source code. Okay, so I had already downloaded the source code here. I would like to go over the source code briefly. So first thing first is we would have node.java, similar to a singly linked list. But keep in mind, one major difference between singly linked list and doubly linked list is there is a new item called previous um, inside the node. So thereby, that's the only change in node.java. If you would compare that with our previous singly linked list, you would find that, interestingly, there is only one change, right? So a new item is added called previous, and then you should be able to see the getter and setter for previous, similar to what we had. I'm highlighting the getter and setter here. So similar to what we have for the next pointer, we would also need to have a getter and setter. Okay, so let's go over the links tab and try to understand what the starter code is doing. So starter code is creating an object of links, and then this time, rather than creating an array of linked list, we had seen that earlier when we talked about singly linked list, where we created an array of linked list. So here we are not creating an array of linked list. Instead, we are creating just one linked list with different items in it. So we will run a for loop for I equal to 0 to 5, and then you would find that we are adding the individual items. So meaning we are adding 5 items inside that one linked list. And then we will display the nodes. We'll call the function called display nodes, and we would want to print the size of that linked list as well. So next thing is we would need to go into the links.java and understand how the insert and display works, right? So I'm going to click on the links.java. So first thing first is you would find a new member in a doubly linked list called a node tail, right? Because we want to maintain both the header and the trail node, right? So you would need to maintain both those in a doubly linked list, and thereby you would find the tail to be initialized to null as well as part of the constructor. And then we have our insert node function here. So you would find this to be quite interesting and a little bit different from what we seen earlier for a singly linked list. So first thing first is we would want to create a temporary node, right? Every time a data is coming in and you want to add a new item, you simply create a temporary node. And then you check if head is null. What does that mean? That simply means the list is empty, right? So the list is empty, and thereby you're adding your first item to the linked list. So you have temp.setNext is set to null, temp.setPrevious set to null, head is temp, and tail is temp, right? Because there's only one node at this point inside the linked list, or inside the doubly linked list, as I should say. If the head is not null, then it means that the linked list is not empty, right? All right, so you will simply check if the linked list is not empty by doing the else condition. And then here you're going to set the current node to be the head node. And then you're going to iterate through the linked list, come all the way to the end of that linked list so that we can add the new item to that linked list, right? And you know that the new item is temp. So current is head initially, and then this while loop would ensure that the current pointer goes all the way to the end of that list by doing current equal to current.getNext. Similar to what we did with the singly linked list, no major changes. So everyone should be able to understand what we are doing here is simply we are iterating through the list, setting the pointer all the way to the end of the list. And then once we get to the end, we do a current.setNext is equal to temp, which means then the new node is added after the current node, right? And the current node was the last node in the linked list. And then temp.setNext is null. We know that the new node, every time we add a new node, the next element or the next node should be pointing to the null. And then the key here is setting temp.setPrevious as current, which means then when a new node is added, the previous node of that new node would be the current node, right? So, which means then the node that was the last node before adding the temp node would be the previous node, right? So finally, then you set tail equal to temp, which means then the last node is your tail node, right? And you increment size. All right, well, what's the idea here? Let me open a new tab here. So when data is coming in, let us say if the first one is 0, the next one is 1, the next one is 2, right? So next one is 3. And then every time you're adding an element, you're adding it to the end of that linked list. So when a node, let us say 4, is coming in, you set temp as 4, right? And you know that the current by now is nothing but 3, right? Current is 3. Because you're running that iterator, the while loop, you're running that while loop, I should say, the iterative block to increment the current every single time, right? All right, so current now was 3. Then we simply set current.setNext as temp, right? That's what we did there. And then temp is that new node. So you simply set temp.setNext as previous. And then temp.setPrevious would be current, right? So the moment you do that, then you added a new node called 4, and you did that connection both ways, right? So the connection here is doing both ways every single time. You can see the connection is being done in this fashion here, right? All right, well, that's the idea here with the insert. Let's go over the links.java again. This time we will look at display nodes. So we like to print the items in the linked list, right? If we say if the size is less than 1, then we know that the list is empty. Else, node current equal to head, while current not equal to null, you simply print the data item that is associated with the current node. And then current.getNext, every single time you're moving to the next item towards the right, right? So you're moving forward, in other words. And then you simply print all the elements. And if we go back to our links tab, we have our display nodes. And display notes would simply go ahead and print the list in the forward direction, right? All right, can we quickly take a minute here to run this program? I like to run this program here. I had already downloaded and I'm able to run it, and the starter code should be able to print the result in this fashion here: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and there are 5 nodes you should keep in mind. All right, well, now I like you to take up an activity where you're going to do two major changes to this code, and I ask that you work on this and make sure that you're going to do the submission through the GitHub Classroom link that I would be sharing with you guys very soon. I like everyone to make sure you do the commit and push by end of the session. Those who are in a different time zone, I like to ask that if you guys can do the commit and push by 5 p.m. today, EST, then I will accept that for your submission for today's class participation, or I should say remote class participation credit, right? So what are the changes? So we are going to do two major changes to the code. We are going to add an item at the front of the list. Earlier, keep in mind, the starter code is adding an item at the end of the list. I like you to work on adding an item to the front of the list. And second thing is we want to display the list in the reverse order. So keep in mind that we were displaying the list in the forward order in the original starter code, right? So I like you to work on these two activities. I'm going to call this as task 1 and task 2, right? And I like to see that you guys are making the appropriate code changes to these two items. And as I said, you will do the commit and push before 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so as to make sure that you get the class participation or remote class participation credits for today. So how would we go about modifying our code in order to set up these two things, right? So let's go over that. Let's go to links tab, and I'm going to make a change here. I'm going to say this is the insert, or let's name this add add lost, right? So that's the code that we did here, but I like to also copy that code and put it right here, and here I would say add friend, and then let's cut this code, and I like you to place this code right here. Display nodes forward. Let's create one more method. Display nodes reverse. Okay, and at this point I would do a system.out.println, add some dashes here, right? And then let's copy lines 7 and 8. I'm going to place it right here. Display nodes forward and display nodes reverse, right? All right, well, we don't have these methods in our links.java, so we need to do that change. So I'm going to add last to that links.java. So replace insert node with add last, right? So all right, so let's also create another function for you here. I'm going to create a new method called add friend. And keep in mind, here's where you would add your own logic, right? So you're going to add your logic here. Okay, and then display nodes, I think we named it as display nodes forward. going to copy that, put it across right here, and then we will need to create a new method, display nodes backward, or is it reverse? I think it's reverse. Let me double check. Yeah, so let's go ahead and add display nodes reverse, and this is where you're going to add your logic, right? So you're going to add your logic here, add your logic here. All right, well, this is the modified, I should say, the modified version of the starter code, right? So you should be able to save this now, and let me also make sure that, so at this point you should be able to see that the program has successfully compiled, and I believe that it should also compile for you with the changes that we did, and I didn't do any major changes except saving the file. So to kind of go over again, right? So we added add last, and then we added the new methods display node, forward and reverse, and then we added add friend, display node forward and reverse, right? So at this point the code is compiled, and if I would run the links tab, so I should see that I get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, but then I'm not going to receive anything different yet, right? All right, so if you would go back to the links.java, the actual work that I like you to do is inside the method add friend and inside the method display node reverse. Once you get that done, then you should be able to see a different set of results in this console here, right? All right, well, let's work on this here remotely. And if you like to reach out to me, and if you have any questions, feel free to do so. I would have my virtual office hours from 11 to 12:30 today, and also in the afternoon, my office hours is from 2:30 to 4. So feel free to reach out to me via email or Slack. And also, if you like to schedule the office hours, then you should be able to schedule it like what you usually do in the past, right? So you would go to my website and then simply click on the schedule link from there. In the teaching page, if you go to the teaching section, there should be a link called schedule a meeting. So you should be able to schedule it from there. And then I would send you a Google Meet link once you had scheduled the meeting. So at that point, we will do a remote meeting. Okay, so all right, well, thanks for watching this video here. And if you have any further questions, I like you to ask through Slack or email. Okay, well, I'm going to end this video here. Okay, thank you.